Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel and a brand new playlist starting this week. I'm going to be making a start on Tamiya's 132 scale Mosquito. This is already a fantastic kit, but if you saw the preview video that I did a couple of weeks ago now, you'll know that I'm going to be taking this a step further with a couple of Edward brass insets and also the big synset, which includes quite a bit of etch brass detail as well. So take a look back at that video if you want to see exactly what's coming up. So in this first episode I'm going to be making a start on the cockpit. I'm not going to get the whole thing done in the first episode. I'm going to be spreading the cockpit assembly over a couple of episodes. So in this part I just want to get the main parts cut out and make a start on one or two bits of etch brass work to enhance the cockpit. So there's a lot to do with this kit, so let's bring the camera over and make a start on the model. Okay, off we go. So as is usual for an aircraft kit, we're going to start off with the cockpit assembly, and in this 132 scale Mosquito we've got the cockpit assembly taking place over about 9 or 10 stages. Obviously there's an awful lot of detail to be fitted together in the cockpit, but Tamiya take things steady and don't give us too many parts to deal with in one particular assembly sequence. So there's only half a dozen or so, maybe 7 parts to be fitted in this first stage for the pilot's seat and the pilot's bulletproof plate here. But one thing that I have done is I've studied carefully the photo etch instructions for the interior. So this is the Edward photo etch set, and I've compared the assembly instructions for the photo etch with the kit instructions, and I've marked up on the kit instructions where we've got photo etch assemblies to deal with. So here for example we have the flare rack, which is replaced with photo etch parts for the flare rack, and I've just made a note of those photo etch parts here in the Tamiya instructions. And that's in case we need to do any preparation of the Tamiya parts. So this part here, Q23, which is the Tamiya plastic flare rack, needs to have the frame cut away and just leaving the flares themselves. So it's just a note so that you don't go too far ahead in the assembly sequence and make it more difficult to fit the photo etch than you need to. So it's just a little bit of organisation. I spent an hour or so just checking through and cross-referencing the Edward instructions here with the Tamiya instructions and annotating the Tamiya instructions. So now that we're confident that we can make a start, let's cut these plastic parts out and get them prepared, and we can maybe start putting some of them together. Another thing that I find useful on these more complex kits, it's not necessary for a simple kit with only 1 or 2 sprue frames on it, but this has got lots, so I just put a label on and mark it up with the sprue letter, and that just makes it easier to find. Sometimes these letter markings on the sprues are a little bit difficult to find when the parts are in the box, so that just makes it instantly recognizable, and that's just worth doing the first time you use one of the sprues. So we'll make a start and get the armour plate, the pilot's armour plate panel removed. The Tamiya parts that we're dealing with now, they're very well moulded, but even so it's worth just checking all of them just to make sure you're getting rid of all the seam marks. There is a mould line in the side of this cushion, and it doesn't take long to do, but it's just worth completely getting rid of that seam. I think I'm going to leave this part off for the moment, because up here we've got this pin on the end. You can just see it there against the black background, and I think the top of the harness fits around that pin, so it comes through the armour plate from the front side, and then there's, at least on the Tamiya harness, there's a ring that goes around that pin. So I just need to check the fabric seat belts and the buckles and fittings that I've got for the seat belts to see if it's the same. But for the moment I'll just leave that to one side. These parts are the flare racks in the Tamiya kit. They're positioned here on this bulkhead underneath the navigator's seat. And Edward also provide these brass parts. And originally I thought that these were to replace the elements of plastic on the Tamiya parts, but I don't think they are. They're designed to fit to the model, fit to this bulkhead, if you didn't want the flares in place, so an empty cartridge rack. But I prefer the model with the parts as they are, so I'm going to leave those out. I'll paint these separately and fit them once they've been painted up. But they will need a bit of a clean up. They've got a mould seam around the top there, so I want to get rid of that. Just a gentle wipe, that's all it needs. The Tamiya parts are really very well moulded. They don't need an awful lot of work to clean up. Start to just detail this bulkhead up now, and the first thing is to fit some of the brass from the Edward set. This one replaces part A14 in the Tamiya kit. I'm just starting to detail this bulkhead now. So we've got a pair of flare racks, a large and a small one, and Tamiya provide this photo etch, stainless steel photo etch plate that fits just above the lower rack. And the slight difficulty with this one is that it slightly obscures, when you've got this in the correct position, there's two little locating holes, so you know you've got that in position, but it just slightly obscures the lower attachment for this flare rack. So it just makes it a slightly awkward fit. It will go, but it's very tight. Now Edward also provide the plate, a replacement plate, which is this brass one, and it's slightly smaller than the Tamiya part. You can see it's maybe a millimetre less deep, so that won't cause a problem with this flare rack attachment. But I want to get it into the correct position, so I'll just put a small mark on that, and we'll put the Edward part in the same position as the Tamiya part is intended to go. There are a couple of pips that locate the Tamiya part, which we're going to have to remove because the Edward replacement doesn't have that. So the Edward part will sit something like that in the position that we had for the Tamiya one. So that part should fit a lot easier now. This is the fire extinguisher, which sits just to the right hand side here, and Ed would provide a replacement bracket for that. I'm not sure I'll use it. It's possibly not going to add a great deal to the part, but we'll cut it out and see what it does. It's very easy when you're using photo etch to be drawn into using every single part, regardless of whether or not it actually adds anything to the model. Sometimes I think photo etch looks worse than the original plastic, so you just have to be a bit careful with how you go about using photo etch. I think it might look a little bit better, I think, than the Tamiya part, and it will be easier to paint. I can just paint this in the green of the cockpit and then just slot the fire extinguisher, which will be red, I guess, into the bracket. So I will use that one. It was touch and go whether I did, but I think it's more for ease of painting rather than it being that much finer than the kit part. That's the reason I'll use it. Just needs a bit of a tighter bend on it first of all. So I think that will look a little bit better. We will use that one. So I'm going to remove the moulded in bracket from the Tamiya part, which is this. There's quite a bit of clean up to that, but hopefully it'll fit. This is the brass bracket that we've folded. I think that's a marginal improvement to that part in terms of accuracy, but the real benefit is being able to paint it separately. So I can fit the bracket onto the bulkhead here and paint it in the interior green, then just drop the red painted fire extinguisher in afterwards. So probably worth using that. Now that I'm confident that I am going to use it, I'll just need to remove the two location stubs for the original Tamiya part. These little pins. Okay, we have a bit of work to do on the pilot's seat now. This Edward part here is a cable. I think it's some sort of release for the harness. It goes along the side of the pilot's seat and round the back of the armour plate here. I'm not too happy to use that really. First of all, it's flat etched when I'm sure it's some sort of very fine cable, so I'm going to replace that. And also the attachment at the bottom, which looks like a release handle here, I don't think adds very much to the moulding that Tamiya have put here at the side of the seat. So I'd rather use that. I think that's going to be a nicer result using that. And I'll just use some very fine lead wire to go up the side of the seat and round the back to replace that part. So again, it's another area where photo etch isn't always the best. I will use this plate which just fits around the lower part of the arm here, and it just locks the cable in place as it travels up the side of the pilot's seat. To replace this cable in this Etch brass part, I'm going to use some 0.3mm lead wire. Lead wire is really good for adding cables to models, and that's just because it bends easily, it stays in shape, and it's very easy to glue down, so I generally use lead wire if I can. I've also got some copper wire, which is nearly as good, but the lead just stays in position a bit better. These cushions will be painted separately and weathered, and I'll fit them when the rest of the cockpit green is on the main seat. I just want to check out the harness that I've got in the Edward Etch set, just to see how it compares with the Tamiya parts that we're going to be putting at the top here. So just checking out what I can fit here at the back. We have some parts which attach to the back of the seat and lock the top of the harness in position at the back. But I'm going to be using Edward's fabric seat belts. So I just want to make sure that I'm going to be able to use those without any modification. This is the Tamiya part that we use straight from the kit, or we would use if we were doing it straight from the kit. So we have this clasp at the top of the harness with this ring here, and that stem goes through the armour plate here at the back, and the ring is locked into position by another part which runs up the back of the seat. So I just want to make sure that the fabric seat belts are going to allow me to do the same thing. So that's the Tamiya part with the top clasp, and the equivalent part in the Edward set is this one here, part 7, and it only has this very small little ring on it, so it doesn't have anything that goes through the armour plating with a hook on the end. So we're going to have to modify that part if we do use it. So I'm going to have to use a very fine piece of wire, I think, to thread through that hole at the top. There is a hole in there. I don't think you'll be able to see it on camera, just there. So a piece of wire through that hole, looped through the armour plate and around the locking mechanism at the top. I think the parts running up the back here with the Tamiya piece of plastic that fits on the back as well was all apparatus for unlocking the seatbelt in an emergency. So I will be able to use the Edward harness attachments, but as I say, with a little bit of modification. But it also means that I think I'm going to be able to fit the part that runs up the back of the seat. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to do that, but I think it'll be okay. I just want to check these major cockpit assemblies now, because we've got another piece of Edward resin in this case that I just want to check for fit. The bulkhead that we've just built fits onto the floor like that. It's a really nice fit. This floor on the underside, which is the forward side of the bomb bay and armament bay, has this part in it which just fits onto the back, and again that's just such a fantastic fit. These parts just drop together really. It's a wonderful piece of engineering by Tamiya to get those parts like that. See, the forward edge here has the openings for the cannon barrels that go through and underneath the cockpit floor. So that's that part. The thing that I'm interested in is this front bulkhead here. This is the Tamiya part that comes in the kit, and it forms the after part of the machine gun bay in the nose. So that's all this area here, and of course we're fitting the brass-in set for the nose gun bay, and the brass-in set has this part in it to replace the Tamiya part. So I just want to make absolutely sure that this brass-in part's going to fit in the same way that the Tamiya part fits. I'm sure it will, but I just want to make absolutely sure of that before I go any further with the cockpit assembly. And I'll just check that for fit. And that's a perfect fit. It's not going to cause any problems at all. It's just a straight swap for the Tamiya part, but just a bit more detailed with the boxes on the bulkhead there. The last major component we've got for this part of the assembly is this other bulkhead, which carries the back of the instrument panel and also the pedal box underneath, which is here. So that fits in that sort of position just ahead of this bulkhead. So I'm happy that all those parts are going to go together without any problem. The use of the Edward resin isn't going to get in the way of any of the assembly. It's just a straight replacement for the Tamiya part. I'm just looking for parts here that I can fit that all need to be painted in the cockpit green colour. And I was thinking of fitting this part here, which looks to be some sort of gearbox for the flight controls. This is the base for the control stick. So there's some sort of pump or filter or something on that. So I'm not going to glue that in position. When I come to do the painting, I might just tack it into place so that it can be removed to do the detail painting on it. So it's just things like that that I'm trying to work through at the moment. What can I get away with fitting? What really needs to stay off the model and be painted separately? I've thought about the arrangement for the harness here at the back of the armour plate. And I think, given that I'm going to be using the Edward part, which is slightly different to the Tamiya, I'm going to glue this into position. I think I'll be alright to do that now. That's the cable I fitted earlier, fitted to the top of the harness strap, where that's going to connect here. These are the parts for the drift sight, which for the main part is in the cockpit green colour, so I'll get this ready. The top of it has got a bit more detailed colour into it, some black, so I won't do the complete assembly of this. I'm just really assembling all the parts that I'm going to be painting in the green first of all. So this the sight fits here down at the front. The actual mechanism goes on the top, so this isn't a complete assembly yet, but that can go in with the rest. I think that's just about as much as I can glue together just at the moment until I've started to do a little bit of painting. I'll be replacing the rudder pedals with the Etch brass parts in the Edwards set, which are these, and we have a bit of soldering work to do on these. I think you could glue them together. Just to be absolutely sure, I'm going to solder them. Just involves getting a bit of flux down at the bottom of the pedal, and obviously we want to get these nice and tight together. And lined up as well. It needs very little solder to make sure that these parts are fixed. Just run around the bottom edge, and that's quite enough to make them nice and secure. The two sides of the pedal then go onto this cross piece, which I'll just secure with a bit of extra thin or super thin super glue. These are the actual footrests, which have to be bent slightly. They're pretty awkward to get in, actually. Soldering that footrest was quite a risk, I suppose, really, but it's made the assembly much stronger. That's quite a solid piece of brass now. So it's the way to go if you can manage it. So these side braces hook onto the footrest down at the bottom. There's a little pin comes out of the side, and then the top just glues down further up the pedal. Those Edwards pedals are really nice. I'll do the other one off camera, but I'll just have a look at the Tamiya part just to compare it. So this is the Tamiya rudder pedal, which is obviously solid at the side. Doesn't have any of that detail that we've got on the Edward brass ones. So they're quite a lot nicer and should add a little bit. They're going to be fairly difficult to see. You might be able to see them through the side hatch. But anyway, they're still better than the Tamiya parts and worth doing, I think. As I said, I'll do the other one off camera. Whilst we're in the area of the rudders, or the rudder pedals. These are the mechanisms for the top where the actual pedal fits. So I might as well glue those into place. These are the cockpit green colour. So the mechanism just drops in from the top side of the rear of the instrument panel. So from underneath, the original Tamiya pedals would have fitted something like that. So in comparison, the Edward pedals would just hook on to the mechanism here at the top. So I think they'll add quite a bit of detail in this area in the footwell. So that's all good. As I said, I'll do the other one off camera and we can have a painting session at the beginning of the next episode of this series. Okay, so that's the model underway at last, and the cockpit main components cut out, cleaned up and ready for some primer. The way I've approached it is to try and get as many parts as I can together to prime and paint in the basic cockpit green. There's an awful lot of detailing work to done and detail painting to be done, but I just wanted to get them to the same sort of stage where I could get that first coat of paint applied. So moving forward to part 2, that's the way that I'll start the episode off next time. Get the priming done, get the first coat of paint done, and we'll then move on, see what we've got to do after that to get some more of the detail done. So I'll be working on that over the next 10 days, couple of weeks or so, but I've also got work to do on the Tamiya P51. This is the 48 scale P51 that you can see is coming along quite nicely, and also the Corvette's underway as well. I've got some more to do on that this week. So if you're going to be following this Mosquito build, just make sure that the notifications are turned on for the channel, and as soon as that's out, as I say, probably in the next 10-14 days, you'll be notified when that's up and you'll be able to watch the next part. So I've got an awful lot going on in the shed with these 3 projects running concurrently, so I hope you'll be able to follow along at least one, if not all of them. So until the next time, everybody, look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.